Julia Pearson is a mother of four, grandmother of six, who works as a museum director in southern Indiana. She and her husband Bruce met Dathel and Carolyn Kendall at an academic conference in 2008. Dathel was wearing a mask, and Carolyn was wiping down the table because Dathel had late-stage leukemia. Dathel was an amazing person. He had multiple careers, held multiple degrees, and had spent decades working to preserve two extinct Native American languages. He was also an extraordinarily caring and committed person. He worked with Heifer Project in Central America and with many peace and anti-poverty groups in the U.S. He had taken several trips with Grandview United Methodist Church's Appalachia Service Project team, which seeks to make homes in Appalachia warmer, safer, and drier. Julie was so inspired by meeting Dathel that she went home to Indiana and immediately put herself on the National Bone Marrow Donor Registry and began folding paper cranes as a way of praying for Dathel. With each crane, a prayer for Dathel, a prayer for his sons, Charlie and Andy, a prayer for Carolyn, a prayer for others around the world who are hurting. Often tears fell onto the origami paper as Julie folded. The cranes were connected to Dathel through the famous story Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes. It's the story of a 12-year-old girl who has leukemia because of radiation from the atom bomb that struck Hiroshima. In Japanese lore, cranes are said to live 1,000 years, so as a way of wishing people longevity, 1,000 cranes are often given as gifts at weddings or the birth of a child. Sadako began folding cranes as a prayer for her own healing and for world peace. When she died, other children completed them for her. Dathel died in Christmas time 2008, but Julie kept folding. For a while, she had to stop because life got busy. But then, in February of this year, she decided to complete the project and, when she was done, to present the cranes to Carolyn in memory of her beloved husband. Julie wanted to complete the cranes during Lent because they held such beautiful meaning as symbols of struggle and prayer and death and resurrection. She finished folding and began stitching the cranes together on 77 strands. She pricked her fingers many times, and so some of the cranes not only had tears on them, but blood too. The cranes were completed March 10th.
The next day, the tsunami and earthquake struck Japan. Now the cranes took on yet another powerful meaning for Julie. And then the crisis at the nuclear power plant began to unfold, and so these cranes were linked yet again to Sadako's experience, which began with radiation. Julie called Carolyn and began telling her what she had done. She said she wanted to present these fragile folded prayers to Carolyn in some way, and thought it might be meaningful to do that in the church where Carolyn and Dathel had been so active. In her mind's eye, she saw the cranes hanging from a branch in the sanctuary. When Carolyn let the church staff know about it, the pastors immediately thought of One Great Hour of Sharing, which was coming up on April 3rd. One Great Hour is an ecumenical offering that supports world relief efforts. In the United Methodist Church, the offerings go toward the United Methodist Committee on Relief, UMCOR. That seemed like the perfect time to have Julie come, but it was only 10 days away. Could she do it? Julie immediately agreed to drop everything and come. On Friday, April 1st, she and Bruce began making the 620-mile trek through 4 states with a carload of cranes neatly wrapped in tissue paper. A crew of Dathel's friends from ASP met Julie at the church on Saturday afternoon to help hang the cranes. The branch came from a tree that had just fallen down in Dathel's friend Eudora's yard. Another friend, Sandy Cummings, forwarded an email she had just received, an ad from Oshkosh B'gosh. The company, famous for its children's overalls, announced that for every paper crane it received, it would send a new piece of clothing to people in Japan who had lost everything in the disaster. In a tearful conversation, Julie and Carolyn agreed that is exactly what Dathel would have wanted. And so Julie arrived. We oohed and awed as we opened the tissue paper to find all those tiny, precious cranes. And we hung them, and the next day Julie told Grandview's congregation Dathel's story and the story of the cranes, and we read some haiku, and we sang the Japanese hymn, Hear, O Lord, Your Servants Gather, which amazingly was also the opening hymn at Dathel's memorial service. And we received an offering. The church sent more than $8,000 to Japan and to the work of UMCOR in relieving suffering worldwide. And on Easter morning, we will take down those cranes, deliver them to the local Oshkosh store, and watch as they fly away over the Pacific Ocean to become new clothes, a tangible sign of peace and resurrection for people waiting and longing for rebirth after a deadly disaster. If you want to fold a paper crane and turn it into clothing, you can take it to your local store, or if you wish to mingle them with Julie's cranes, send them to the church at 888 Pleasure Road, Lancaster, on or before Easter, April 24th. For more information and pictures, go to www.grandviewumc.org.